Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Ben Crossman, and we have a great show for you today because we have the one, the only, Mr. Scott Schober. If you have listened to the show before, he's been on a number of times as he is now a regular Computer America correspondent. Happy to have him on board with us, and of course, his insight and the expertise he brings to the show is something that we really do value. So we're gonna have a full hour with him as we talk about many parts of technology, including current events and security, things like that. And he's an expert on keeping businesses safe and of course keeping individuals safe because hey, cybersecurity. But before we do that, a couple of things to mention, including computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find everything from the show notes to the live video feed where you can watch Computer America. You can find our social media contest, which is sponsored by Logitech. Give away a prize every single Friday. Just got word that our previous winner just had their prize sent out to them. So yeah, that should be arriving there shortly. And hey, if you want to be a winner, all you have to do, head on over to our website and enter the contest. There's like 8 different ways. And again, a winner every single Friday. And, I mentioned the show notes, but I should really highlight those because Scott did a really good job of, everything that we're going to be talking about today. Well, he has it all right there. And, of course, we have a link to his website where you can find, of course, his book and many other tips and tricks on how to keep yourself safe or, hey, even your business. So, with all of that said, not much here to report on for Computer America. Nope. The only thing I should start mentioning is that 4 weeks from now, so, we're going to have a full week of shows, December, I think it's like the 18th to the 23rd, full week of shows, and then starting that Saturday, I think it's like the 23rd, 24th, we have off, and then the full week after that, so the entire week of Christmas week, no new Computer America. But then the following Tuesday, so it's going to be like 9 days, and then Tuesday, we'll be back at it. And that will be our 27th year running. Very excited about that. So just to get it out there, we will be having about 9 to 10 days off. So keep that in mind. All right, so once again, bringing him on, Scott Schober, regular correspondent here for Computer America, and of course, the author of Hacked Again. Scott, welcome back onto Computer America.
Yeah, great to be back. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. So, fun in so much as talking about people's identities being compromised and companies being breached, as fun as that can be. But, so before we get started, why don't you give us, new listeners a little bit of background on yourself? What makes you, so interested in cybersecurity?
Yeah, absolutely. A brief background. I love technology, love computers, grew up as a geek and a hacker myself. And our company here, Berkeley Varitronic Systems, family-run business, 45 years old, was founded by my father, our CTO, and I kind of picked up the helm, go back about 15-plus years ago as president and been developing technology and tools, a lot of focus in wireless and security. And then our company ended up getting targeted. The more and more that I started educating people how to stay safe, we got targeted and we got hacked again and again and again. And the result of that became a book, and we've learned a lot how to stay safer and stronger in this terrible world where hacks just never end. So I really enjoy trying to continually educate myself and sharing what I learned with other people. And certainly this is a great platform, and I congratulate you. I didn't know you guys were around 27 years. It's wonderful. So it's nice to see there's some companies and educating people for that period of time is truly amazing in this world. So
right.
It's a wonderful achievement.
Honestly, I'm 27 years old, so there's no indication that the show would be around for that long. But yeah, Craig started 27 years ago, and
Wow.
back then it was catering to lugs, which and user groups and things like that.
Hmm.
And how technology has changed in over the course of the show. And luckily we chose the right topic. We did not choose, dial-up phone systems as the topic of the show. Technology, ever present and even more important today, and more complicated. So I think a
Yeah.
good place to start today's show will be, one of the most recent breaches, because, last time you were on, we were still, it seems like so long ago, but, the Equifax was still pretty recent. The Sonic hacks were pretty recent. It seems like and we don't do this on purpose, but you seem to time your interviews with when a major company gets breached. And I think it's just because it's happening monthly, if not weekly at this point. So lead us into Uber. What happened there, and how big of a problem is it?
Yeah, with Uber, it is kind of timely if you think about it, because there's always a big breach right before I come on. But Uber breach, I think, caught a lot of attention. Not just the fact that there's such a huge customer base for Ubers between the drivers and riders. In this case, they reported about 57 million records, in a sense, were compromised. This was personal information, and that encompassed emails and addresses, again, for drivers and for riders. And in particular, one standout was 600,000 driver's licenses were also compromised. So if you just look at the headlines of a compromise and associate that to a large company, be it Target of the past or Home Depot, Equifax, anything, it's alarming. It gets attention. The part that's exceptionally alarming here, that takes it to the next level, was Uber failed miserably in reporting the breach. They knew about this, and they didn't act quickly. And there are rules and regulations that say, hey, when you do suffer a breach and you find out about it, hey, you gotta report this to the proper authorities, and you gotta alert your customer base, and so on and so forth. Now, what did they do instead? Even 2 weeks before the breach even went public, they have a potential investor that was going to be pumping some serious money into Uber, and they shared that with them privately before even announcing anything to the public or the authorities. And on top of it, then we learned that they paid a ransom. $100,000 was paid, and in the form of a bug bounty, they called it, which is not uncommon. Bug bounties, we probably all have heard of. Companies pay out. Uber and many other large tech companies will pay people so they can actually try to ethically hack and find vulnerabilities and expose them. However, that's not what this case was. This was two hackers believed to have gotten in there, or allegedly got in there, and stole all this information, and they called it a bug bounty, and they paid them $100,000 to delete all of those compromised files.
Right, and you obviously work in space, but correct me if I'm wrong on any part of this, but bug bounties generally done by white hat hackers, people who
Exactly.
are security researchers, and there's actually a process. It's not like you hold files ransom. No, you go through, you find your reportings, you document it, and essentially help them fix it. Instead, this is why it's so not a bug bounty reward, is that it was ransom. It was ransom.
Yeah. Well said. It really was. It was in a sense ransom. Normally we hear the term ransomware, which is something different, but it was ransom. Hey, we've got your data from your drivers and your customers, and then you got to pay us, or else we're going public with this. We're going to take it out there and let the world know.
So so my next question to you is that obviously this was handled by the Uber chief of cybersecurity, or whatever position it was, but essentially the person in charge of cybersecurity. What do you think led this person, who I assume has some kind of education in the field, what do you think kind of led them to believe that if they paid this $100,000, they would delete the files? Because everything that we've talked about here on the show, you can't really take these hackers at face value.
I was puzzled by that, and if you look into it too, it appears that the CEO and the chief security officer were in cahoots and both knew this. And I believe the chief security officer was also a lawyer, so they know the rules, they know the regulations, they know the requirements about going public and reporting this, reporting to law enforcement, and informing customers, so on and so forth. So you've got that all on one side, and then the other side of it, you've got Uber's looking to do an IPO. If they want to go out for initial public offering and they get tarnished, it could really affect the investors. So I believe they use this as an opportunity to cover up things. And unfortunately, they got a terrible track record. If you look back at, they've already got two other ongoing litigation problems from prior breaches that we don't hear a whole lot about, where they did not handle things properly. So we see a pattern of that when the company is compromised and breached. But then they've got several sexual harassment cases. They've got a whole bunch of other litigation going on. So it's kind of a train wreck, but the irony of it is they've got such deep pockets and so much cash and so much value and such fast growth. I think somebody says, hey, here, hand me a shovel and just shovel the money in and don't worry about the problems. We'll take care of it later on. That's the perception I'm getting. But it doesn't make any sense to me from a business owner's perspective. They messed up across the board, period.
And this is an observation I made a couple of weeks ago, was and it wasn't even about this particular case. It was something else Uber did, and it was something like Uber was covering up the fact that they weren't doing proper criminal background checks on their drivers, and they had something in the order of a couple thousand drivers who had a violent criminal record past, who were driving people around. And and back then I made the comment that it seems like Uber, like if they had a publicist and they said, how do we just tarnish, and to use your word, tarnish Uber as much as possible, and I don't think they could come up with a game plan as succinct that Uber does, where you're right, sexual harassment, there's the criminal background, there's the hacking, the cover up, and Uber's just so I don't know if they're in such a dominant market, but they're untouchable. Investors just don't seem really put off by the fact that they do this. So to wrap this up, and Uber, so obviously 57 million drivers and 600,000 driver's license. Real quick, do you know if the 57 million drivers and riders, do you know if that was strictly bound to the U.S. or was that just in all markets that Uber caters to?
I believe those estimates that were reported were for the U.S., but now there's some additional revelations about the U.K. and other areas as well. So we don't have a full picture of it, but more and more keeps being reported. So it's starting to get scarier and scarier because they've handled it so bad in the past. I'm sure we're going to get a whole lot more information. The other one thing that to me is a little bit fascinating, and again, we don't know, we mentioned $100,000 was paid. Don't know for sure how that was paid. Was it a check? Was it done in Bitcoins, which is typically how a lot of bug bounties are paid? Mm-hmm. And with just the cost of Bitcoins, where that was at the time that the ransom was paid to what the value is now, that $100,000 would be worth $1 million today. So it's interesting. I'm sure more will come out as the investigation continues, but I'd like to see some of the details of that as it does unfold.
Well, and of course, that's a very good segue to branch into Bitcoin. I like how you did that. Just looking up the price of Bitcoin, and let's say they paid it towards the end of the year, and it would have been about $800. So 800 to our next topic conversation, $10,000. Let's do 1,000. So 10 times that. You're right. Yeah. So about $1 million.
Over $1 million. Yeah. It's incredible.
Definitely incredible. So we're going to talk about Bitcoin. But real quick, just to put a bow on Uber. If someone finds themselves in the situation where it's not ransomware, but they have this problem that Uber had, Uber, if you're listening, Scott, what would you recommend a company do in this instance?
Well, certainly if they're a company and they find that they're compromised, even if it's not to this magnitude of Uber, they need to take action immediately. If they can't contain the damage immediately themselves, they need to get outside third-party expert help in, number one. They need to let law enforcement know, and then obviously depending upon their industry, because there are various rules and reporting regulations. It's different from healthcare versus retail versus this. They need to make sure that they get that information and follow through. And probably most important, the part that everybody fails at, many companies fail to let their customers know. In this case, Uber's, their drivers and riders. They got to inform them immediately, which they didn't do in this case, and then usually they're going to provide some type of, in a sense, compensation, and maybe it's free credit monitoring or something. That's kind of the standard thing that most companies do. So at least people can be alert if their information is compromised for identity theft or used in other types of scams. And they should be careful. Any users that do use the Uber service, they might want to consider, should they continue to use it? Should they delete the app off their phone, such as I have? That's up to them, their personal decision. And they really need to read the terms and conditions for any type of ride-sharing app that they're signing up for to make sure they know what information is put out there and what isn't.
Absolutely, yeah, and I mean, if we're talking about end user agreements in Uber, I think Uber is one of the most draconian. Where
Yeah.
like honestly, we could probably spend a whole show harping on the wrongs that Uber has done. But so they were hacked. They have just revealed it a year later, and there's some some weird things going on with investments and timing and things like that. So obviously,
Yeah.
it doesn't look good for Uber, just like it didn't look good for Equifax or many of these other companies that have to share this. But if you take your security, very lax, and you're very lackadaisical in doing this, then hey, you got to pay the toll. And the more I think we put highlights on on the repercussions of being hacked, I think Scott, I think your industry, and many other industries are going to be better off for it, because there are real consequences when you don't consider, securing your systems.
Exactly.
So, all right. So, like I
Excuse me.
said, yeah, no problem. Like I said, we are going to go ahead and move on into Bitcoin. So, just a very quick, kind of summary of what Bitcoin is for anyone who maybe is new, because you've probably heard of it, but it's still, I feel like, in a lot of people's minds, something that's, not really going to affect them in their everyday lives. So maybe they haven't been paying attention. Uh, it is a form of cryptocurrency with the technology called blockchain behind it. Blockchain, essentially a large ledger that verifies every transaction on every machine around the world. And essentially, you have a digital currency that has no physical backing, no government backing, but still cannot be, it would be very hard to hack or compromise or fake a digital currency. So you have this artificial scarcity with them releasing new coins at a very slow rate, along with kind of secure way of processing transactions. Long story short, Bitcoin, it seems to be in some way here to stay. And so, Scott, if you could speak to Bitcoin and what it really means for $10,000 worth of Bitcoin, because it wasn't but 4 or 5 years ago when, I think the most famous one that people point to is it was two like Domino's or Pizza Hut pizzas that were paid with like 10,000 Bitcoin. And, that was like the first verifiable physical transaction for digital currency. Now, one Bitcoin is worth $10,000. What does this mean for the currency?
Well, I think you gave a great overview of Bitcoin, and I personally do think it's here to stay for a while. Will it implode? I think one could easily speculate that, because anything that shoots to the stars as fast as intense from a valuation standpoint is Bitcoin, with nothing that could stand behind it and back it. I think eventually it will implode, from my perspective, and I think it's fascinating how the mechanics of Bitcoin actually works, and that, just as you pointed out, it's hard to hack it. It's hard to break it down, and to actually create Bitcoins requires mining, actual efforts of complex algorithms being solved, and the reward for solving that in its simplistic form is you're rewarded Bitcoin. So to do that, you need computing and PC power, and you need a lot of electric. And if you have that combination to solve these complex equations, you could mine Bitcoins. And there's a finite number of Bitcoins, and I forget the year off the top of my head, if it's year 2030 or something like that.
2027 or something like that, yeah.
Yeah, something like that, that'll actually, they'll all be mined out, and then they'll have other ways of actually rewarding people that are using the currency and maintaining the ledgers and things like that. But it's certainly a fascinating topic, and it seems like it's actually a very secure means of commerce using Bitcoins. And the one recent advisory that I was mentioning that was put out there was issued by was Bitcoin Gold there, I think, and they found some suspicious files, I guess you could say, on a GitHub release page that they didn't have any way to detect or know where the origin of what those files were, and it was there for a little less than a week. And there were certainly some concerns there, because your natural assumption, if these files are residing somewhere, is there any type of malicious intent? Are they somebody trying to steal cryptocurrency or some type of malware there that could do something else? And it's still up in the air, but the alerts certainly just did go out there, and anybody that's using this type of cryptocurrency, Bitcoin specifically, has to use some caution there.
Right, and yeah, sure. And I was just looking it up. It appears to be a problem with the wallet, and the wallet is, for everyone out there, is essentially your repository for these. You have to do a transaction of Bitcoin between wallet to wallet, and and that wallet ID, it's very long, it's very complicated. No one should have access to it other than yourself. There's a public key that you can give to others, and a private key. And if you have both of those, you have access to your wallet. So these files seem to be, suspicious in that potentially they could be affecting the wallet. So essentially, you could, maybe access it or give someone else access to it, or even transfer Bitcoin from wallet to wallet. I'm guessing this is kind of where it's coming from.
Yeah, that's the sense. I guess it's a lot of unknown unknowns, which is scary, but especially if there's hackers behind it and they're trying to get in there and compromise both sides, and you don't have an easy way to stop it or protect it, that could be concerning. It doesn't seem like anything has been compromised from all the research that I've done on it. But again, it's still a little bit early. This is really just fresh in the headlines, but certainly caught my eye.
Do you recall there was a virus going around that it would essentially scan your clipboard, your Control-C on Windows, or Apple Command-C, whatever, and it would scan your clipboard for anything that resembled a Bitcoin wallet string, and it would replace it with another Bitcoin string that was, the hacker's personal one. So, of course, they're very long, unless you recognize it, which is very hard to do. People would be transferring coins, and without knowing so, they would give it the wrong destination. And yeah, they stole something like 600,000 Bitcoin before, because you can see, and folks, this is a really cool part of Bitcoin. You can see who owns Bitcoin. You can check out all the wallets. You can enter a public address, and you can see the money that's in there. It would be like if everyone could see into everyone else's bank accounts. But yeah, even though you can see it, you couldn't reverse the process. You couldn't get it back. And $600,000 later, very simple hacks. Bitcoins are becoming a very real target of hacking, aren't they? I mean, they're not just used in paying ransom and bug bounties. Bitcoin themselves are worth, trying to steal.
Yeah, and I think what you were talking about, I think that was last year, about mid last year or so.
Yeah.
And I think it was Windows clipboard, and that was really Bitcoin mining malware that was created, I guess, that do just what you said there, a type of Trojan there that would target Windows users, and scary stuff there. But think about the world of hacking. If you had to pick a hot target that you wanted to hack, why not Bitcoin? Because it's got the allure of the world of hacking. It's often used as currency. It's digital currency, allows you to remain anonymous, and it's often used in the dark web. So it's a win-win approach for hackers, that's for sure.
So tell us about, and so Bitcoin hits $10,000. Obviously, it's many fear that it's a bubble, while others I've seen are hoping that 40 or 50K is going to be possible by next year's time. Bitcoin is there's a lot of speculation, and it's hard to say exactly where it will land, but we have about 3 or 4 more minutes before the break here, so we can spend this kind of speculating other cryptocurrencies, because Bitcoin is not the only option out there. It's just one of the most popular and one of the first. But there's things such as Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin Gold, I think you mentioned earlier, Ethereum. There are a number of cryptocurrencies available. What do you think about cryptocurrency? Is it something people, obviously they should be aware of it. Do you think this is something that people should look into maybe one day getting? Or I don't think personally we could ever recommend it as a secure investment, but do you think cryptocurrencies have a place in everybody's day-to-day life?
I think they will more and more with time. I would not recommend it by any means for somebody that's looking for an investment tool, because there is such high risk and volatility. There have been billionaires made, and people have lost billions on Bitcoin, is a safe way to say it. It's kind of like going to gambling, Atlantic City or Vegas or something like that. So unless you're in it to realize complete loss, you shouldn't be in it. But there are some other there's Litecoin is getting more popular. Ethereum is a popular cryptocurrency as well, and some of those are tied to certain industries a little bit more, where they're widely accepted, and I think it's like anything else. The user should do a little bit of research and ask themselves, why am I looking to do this? Is it for security? Is it for convenience? Is it for something else? Because maybe their partner or their vendors use it, then it might be worth considering. But to run out there and just start using Bitcoins for no reason, I don't think makes a whole lot of sense, especially with volatility lately. It's crazy.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And so, very, very well said. And so that's cryptocurrency, just hit $10,000. And yeah, all in all, it's, these suspicious unknown files. I mean, that's part of it where I think there are a lot of security minded people who are very enamored with Bitcoin, with the blockchain. They find it, very ingenious, I think, for lack of a better term. But I think, an average person, if they were to get into it, just like these random files that were found in GitHub, they, you can get taken, and it's going to be something that you really need to watch out for. So, yeah. With that being said, and by the way, fun fact, you said that to mine Bitcoin, all you essentially need is a computer with electricity. There was this there was this article that came out about 2 or 3 days ago. Bitcoin mining consumes more energy than 159 other countries. So not in total, but essentially the act of Bitcoin mining is using more electricity than 159 entire countries. So it's popular.
Wow. Yeah, that's an interesting fact. And often you'll tie organized crime, hacking groups that are stealing electricity tied closely to Bitcoin mining.
Oh yeah, and speaking of hackers and Bitcoin mining, there's a recent trend where it's usually not the people who own the website, but people will get into the website, and into the HTML they'll insert a snippet that will essentially utilize a viewer, a visitor. This has happened to Showtime, I think, and a couple other websites, that will essentially use the website visitor's computer to mine Bitcoin surreptitiously in the background and send it to, whoever inserted the code. So have you seen any part of that, or have you recalled any?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah, so this has happened to Showtime a couple of weeks ago, and it appears to be hackers. They mine Ethereum or Bitcoin and send it off. And yeah, even if it takes a couple days with enough people, that's a couple $1,000s, just through that. So,
Sure.
Yeah. So everyone out there, music means we're going to take a break. We'll be right back with Scott Schober. And when we come back, we are going to, I think, talk about Apple just real quick. And then we have a few more topics that can get heady, but I believe in Scott. He'll break it down for us. AI, quantum computer, and autonomous cars. We'll be right back. Computer America, stay tuned.
We are all Brother Wolf. 10 years ago, a group of locals banded together to create positive change. We took animals into our homes, held adoption events at local retailers, and talked to the community about our mission to help build a no-kill Asheville. A decade later, we have achieved so many victories for animals in need. There's been so much progress, yet there's still so much to do. As part of our year-long celebration, we encourage you to become a member of our special Compassionate Circle program. With a monthly donation of $10 or more, you will have behind-the-scenes access to the work we are doing at Brother Wolf. Our goal is to reach 1,000 members because we receive no government funding. Working together, we can help build and sustain no-kill communities. Learn more at compassionatecircle.bwar.org. We are a 501c3 tax-deductible organization.
And welcome back to the Computer America Show. It is 31 minutes past the hour as we continue on here with, Scott Schober. He is a Computer America cybersecurity expert and correspondent, and of course the author of Hacked Again, because who else do you want guiding you through cybersecurity than someone who, not just does it for a living, but was also a victim of it and understands it. So, and by the way, please go check out his book, available at the company that killed the bookstore, Amazon. Go check it out. But so we're continuing on, and we are going to touch lightly on Apple, as I understand it. I don't know if you had a chance to look it up, but so this, and I'll give a brief introduction, because this was a very funny way that this happened, and I've never heard of it happening before. But Apple has a help forum, and you can go there if you have a problem. Either a certified Apple technician will try to help you, or the community will. And a person was locked out of their system, and they needed to change certain permissions, things like that. And essentially, they couldn't access any admin account. So a user, about 3 weeks ago, found a glitch that if you typed in the word root, ROOT, and did not enter any password, it would deny it at first, but then it would glitch, and it would allow the person to log in with admin permissions into any Apple OS X computer. And again, the user submitted this as a solution to another problem, but a couple weeks later, someone stumbled upon it, and they're like, this is honestly the largest security threat to any major OS in the past, decade, because it allowed any OS X computer to be accessed with admin permissions. Scott, did you see any part of this? And what do you think about just random 0-day vulnerabilities, just kind of being stumbled upon?
Yeah, this one was kind of an interesting one there because, number one, the way that you described, the way that it was kind of stumbled upon and figured out, if anything, it's kind of a wake-up call and a little bit probably of a black eye, I think, for Apple, who does a very good job, in my opinion, keeping on top of security. They're well known for secure platforms, be it mobile or computers. They profusely apologize for the vulnerability. It is kind of classified as a critical bug, certainly, and it affects anyone. I think it was the High Sierra Mac OS. So really the key is they're racing to solve it and put out a patch out there. And it's important, obviously, if anybody's using the High Sierra, that they want to make sure that they follow the automatic updating that does happen fairly often. It is a pain, but update your OS frequently. I always encourage people to do that. Why? Because things like this can happen, and you don't want to have people having access to things that they shouldn't have, and that could be a disaster. But I think if you could, anybody that was really trying to take advantage of this particular exploit, it really gave them access to files and folders, and they then could in turn invoke a reset and actually change passwords. It could be extremely damaging. So very important that you make sure you do update this if you're using OS High Sierra.
Yeah, and by the way, I just found an article that it was patched. It was patched, I believe, yeah. So this
Recently,
morning,
yeah.
this morning at 8 o'clock. So if you get that update, please do it, because yeah, this one was not technical. You didn't need some kind of weird software. It was just a word and no password. It was
Yeah. Yep, blank password.
yeah,
That was
very 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 silly. But no, and it was found and patched before I think anything too bad could happen. But glad that they
yeah.
did make it public. So with that being said, update your software, of course. Now let's and I'll let you choose, because all these topics, they're very important, and I'll go ahead and because I think one can kind of naturally flow into any of the others.
Sure.
Which one did you want to kind of talk about? Artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and autonomous cars.
Oh, one thing just to pick up, perhaps, because we were talking about Uber before, which I thought was interesting.
Sure.
Not to dwell on them or focus on all their misfortunes, but I thought it was kind of funny. In line with autonomous cars, it's kind of exciting hearing about autonomous cars. And Uber actually, in December, I think it was 2016, so not a little less than a year ago, they actually put the first Uber autonomous vehicles on the road. And what Uber failed to do was actually take out permits and get permission to do it, which I thought was kind of interesting. And I know back then the headlines I remember reading, they had a couple pictures of Uber autonomous vehicles running red lights, and it makes one think right away, how well tested are these autonomous cars that are on the road? And you see the reasons why you need to pull permits and you need to carefully check this type of stuff,
Right, and
before getting out there.
yeah, and I think they were trying to do what Google did, because Google obviously they were testing their self-driving cars for a number of years, and honestly, when Google did it back in 2011, 2012, there was literally no indication that self-driving cars were on the way, and then Google was kind of doing it behind the scenes, and Uber, they kind of came to the party late and tried to do the same thing. And you're right. I mean, I just Googled Uber self-driving car, and about, maybe the 20 pictures down, there is the infamous picture of the Uber self-driving car laying on its side of like in the middle of the street. I don't even know how you do that, but their self-driving car program. But I will say, just made news about a week ago. Self-driving cars, they ordered, I think it was something like 27,000 or something like that, Volvo SUVs that they're going to outfit for self-driving. So, despite their blunders, despite the fact that regulations have not been on their side, they seem to be moving, full speed ahead on this.
Yeah, they are. Now there's good reason one could argue with autonomous cars, and one fact that I always like to share, that there's more than 3,000 deaths a day as a result of road crashes globally. That's over 1 million people die a year. That is staggering. I never realized that many people die as a result of vehicular crashes. So the goal of having autonomous cars, a lot of people think, well, it's so you could read behind the wheel or talk on your phone or this or that. Well, it's really because people are not the best of drivers. They keep crashing cars despite how many safety features. You look back to anti-locking brakes and collision avoidance systems and blind spot sensors and so on and so forth. Cars are getting better. People are not getting any safer, unfortunately. Why? Because now also we have infotainment systems on our car, and yes, we have our smartphones that are constant distractions and so on and so forth. So the hope is that autonomous cars will make it better. The irony of it, all the research is roads with people driving cars mixed with autonomous cars will actually get worse before it gets better, in that autonomous cars are very predictable in nature. They're algorithms, and based upon the terrain and the roads and everything else, a car will make a right-hand turn consistent 100 times. A person will speed up, they'll slow down, they'll weave, they'll cut around somebody, so on and so forth. So when you have the mix of imperfect people with semi-perfect autonomous cars, you're going to get a lot more accidents, probably people hitting autonomous cars for the larger number of accidents.
Right,
scary.
and that was the case with we often talk about self-driving cars, and it's 3 years down the road, 5 years down the road, and well, there was a self-driving bus in Vegas,
Yes.
made news that exactly what you said. It did not break any rules, and within its first day of operation, after like a year of not operating, its first day back, and it got into a collision with a delivery truck. So,
Hmm.
I mean, you're right. As predictable as cars can be, humans are so unpredictable that this may lead to some problems.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it was fascinating. And I think in that case, I think if you had to point the blame or you're trying to give a ticket to somebody, the autonomous vehicle there didn't do anything wrong. It was a truck backed into it or whatever, and the
Yeah.
vehicle actually stopped, so passengers can get off, damage could be assessed, so on and so forth. So it did its job, but it's the unintended consequences of having imperfect human on the road making mistakes, and I think that's an ongoing problem. When we get on the roads, we have to be extremely careful of our surroundings, and there's a lot of idiots driving out there that are causing all these problems every single day.
Well, and that's where part of another topic of discussion we'll talk about in just a moment. Artificial intelligence. You can't separate artificial intelligence from smart cars. That is, or at least autonomous cars, because smart cars is a little tiny car. But no, autonomous cars, artificial intelligence, they're going to learn. So just like a person spends their 40 years of their driving career, or 60 years of their driving career learning over time, each one of these cars is going to be learning from every other car on the road. So, where a person may only get X amount of driving experience, if you have 1,000 cars on the road that each drive 1,000 miles, that's, 1,000,000 miles of experience just on every single car. I mean, don't you think that self-driving cars are going to be exponentially, they're going to get exponentially better? Yes, they're going to get worse, but they're going to get better very quickly, though, don't you think?
Yes, I do. I think you make a valid point, and that's true with all. I think technology. If you're first to market, and often I'm guilty of this, and maybe other techies are too. You want to have the first computer, the first phone, the first type of car, the first smartwatch, the first autonomous vehicle. There's going to be some glitches and gotchas. You pay a premium for it, and you got to be patient with the updates until all the kinks get worked out. But then it becomes better, it becomes more efficient, more convenient, more safe. And I think that's so true. Look at the sheer amount of dollars that are being invested in autonomous cars, that are being invested in artificial intelligence, improving the technology to the next level. I think it's the culmination of all that and great ideas coming together that's going to help solve some of these complex problems and make it a technology that's actually viable, that becomes kind of standard option, just like intermittent windshield wipers are now standard options.
Yeah, and it's certainly gotten to the point that I'm trying to help my parents choose a car that they're going to drive for the next couple of years, and I find myself like my mom in particular, she wants to get a car that is it's her dream car. It's very fancy. She likes it. I'd never pegged her for a sports car fan, but she really wants the speedy, zippy little car. And I find myself saying, I really don't want you to get that because, it's from 2008 and it's great and all, but let's face it, it doesn't have blind spot detection, doesn't have brake detection, it doesn't have lane assist, it doesn't have blah, blah, blah. And as, my parents and many other people get older, these very common features in newer cars, part of me thinks it trumps any other feature in older cars. It may be your favorite car, it may look nice, but the safety features in new cars are just so good. I'm having a hard time, kind of thinking why someone wouldn't get a newer car.
Yeah, yep, I think so, and I think part of it's maybe generational, what you're comfortable with. If you look back and you drive a car 10 years ago versus a couple decades ago, it's night and day. Or we have a pickup truck here that's from I think it's 1931 Ford Model A pickup truck. You want to talk about a night and day difference driving that down the road with no power steering, hard to shift a gear. You got to double clutch it, no power brakes, manual mirrors, no air condition, no heating.
Yeah.
It's as manual as it gets. It's almost when you get in, you don't even know how to drive it. You have to think hard just to concentrate as you're driving and aware of everything. Now, in these modern cars, I have to admit, even the blind spot
Detection,
assist
right.
and
Yeah.
detection and everything else, fascinating. Once you got used to it, my wife got a new vehicle this year, and I was driving it for the first time, and somebody came up alongside me, and you know what? If that sensor didn't detect it, I probably would have hit them.
Mm-hmm.
And at that moment, it clicked, and I said, you know what? It makes sense. I've never been in an accident my entire life. I almost just was, but that sensor just saved me. I felt good about it.
Yeah.
So there is a place for it, and it's getting better and better, and it's not that expensive. Now, what's behind the scenes, what's under the hood in a sense, the number of computers, the average new automobile has about 100 microprocessors screaming. So the negative side of that, you can't get a wrench and a rag and go under your car and fix it. It's all computer controlled, a lot of sensors. You got to go back to the dealership. That's a big negative.
Mm-hmm.
The other part that I'm always concerned with is the hackability. Everything is wirelessly connected, be it Zigbee, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi hotspots in cars, cellular modems. Car manufacturers have to do a better job at really baking in security at the onset to prevent future cars from getting hacked and being compromised in any way. So it's a fine balancing act, I think, between getting it right, getting it safe, not just for drivability, but so it can't be actually compromised or hacked down the road.
So, and let's bring this a little bit back down to home, because obviously, Berkeley Veritonic Systems, a company that you run, you do create, solutions that help people who are driving distracted. And it's obviously, this is a big issue. There have been nationwide campaigns, things like that, lots of awareness. And yet, tell us about your findings about, with all this awareness, you think it'd be less of a problem, but it doesn't seem to be that way. Just in my day-to-day life, I see it happen with, friends, family, and others. How's it kind of going from someone who's trying to, how's it going from someone who's trying to prevent it? How's it going?
It's a tough one, and I could speak to this firsthand. Even yesterday, we have a product we call the Roadhound. I think there's information on it, theroadhound.com. We have a dedicated URL. It's to educate people about distracted driving, the dangers, statistics, so on and so forth, and a solution that we're putting out there, which is basically a deterrent. It will detect as you're approaching a sign. If you're texting or talking on the phone, it'll flash and remind you, hey, stop texting, stupid, put your phone down. And as we were testing it yesterday on 2 passes, and we're doing it safely, I'm driving the car and somebody sitting alongside me texting it, and an engineer monitoring the actual sign, collecting data. As we're driving by it, 2 other motorists went by at a time we weren't texting, and the sign went off. I said, what the heck? And we looked closely, talking on the phone. We said, oh, geez. 2 minutes later, same thing. Another person went by. They were talking on the phone. So everybody is talking on their phone driving behind the wheel. People don't get it, and they almost don't care. Interesting statistic I recently came across. Those surveyed above 18 years old in the United States, 94% of them admitted to texting behind the wheel at some point or another.
Right.
That's almost everybody. That's
Yeah.
staggering. So even though people say, no, I don't do it, well, at one point or another, they probably picked their phone up, they glanced down, they texted, they Facebooked, they did whatever they did, tweeted. So it's not that important. I encourage people, put your phone down. If you're not that disciplined, put it. What I do is when I get in my car, I have a bag or briefcase. I secure it in that so I don't even have access. I don't even want to be tempted to look at it, and I have to turn my smartwatch away so I don't get distracted looking at that while driving now. It's a big problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And that study that you mentioned, the only thing it proved to me was that 94% of people are willing to tell the truth, and 6% of people are liars. That is, it's something that honestly, it's gotten better for me. I really did try not to do it. Hey, when an alert comes in, you at least have to glance at the phone to see what it is, because that noise, it's so placebo effect. But Apple has introduced a new feature, and I'm sure other phones are going to get it soon, that phones can actually detect when they're moving fast enough that they think you're driving, and they'll actually suppress notifications for the duration of the car ride. So, I think a lot of people, yourself, Apple, and many other companies are fighting it. It's probably not going to be solved until, let's face it, self-driving cars take us out of the driver's seat. That's
good point.
so definitely. So with that being said, why don't we shift over to, in these last 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes, why don't we switch over to artificial intelligence, because this is a term that even here on Computer America, we have had companies that are offering artificial intelligence services in many forms. They can come in the form of essentially virtual, digital, pseudo employees who will do certain tasks for you, through their systems. We've had NVIDIA on that talks about, how their hardware is powering artificial intelligence. We've had Intel on, and many others. Everyone is working on artificial intelligence. Why don't you tell us about some of the important ways AI is going to affect us in our day-to-day? And I see here you even have a couple things about hackers and how maybe it could help in that area too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think AI, and you're so correct, it's been around for a very long time, the terminology, the theory on it, and I think it goes back to Alan Turing, which is really kind of the founding fathers of the whole theory of this development of artificial intelligence. It goes back into the 50s or so, with some of the tests and things that he's developed, the Turing test. And over time, it's kind of evolved a little bit for doing, putting smarts into some of these actual decisions that are being made by machines, by computers. And there's variation certainly upon artificial intelligence there, where it can actually have somewhat of a learned behavior based upon how the systems are actually configured and set up. So it could take out the human element in a sense where people are not slowing it down. And now these monumental computing tasks can be done very, very quickly, very efficiently. And what that's actually being used for is solving a lot of the common problems, especially in the world of hacking. Oftentimes when they're trying to profile a hacker or catch a hacker, they need to be able to go out to X number of websites and social media and so on and so forth and gather tons of information that normally would take 20, 30 agents to do all this amassing and comparing. It's just not possible. Now you can throw, in a sense, computing power at this, and you could accomplish it much, much quicker. And it's actually kind of mimicking some of the human functions, these cognitive functions that we have as humans in our mind, the ability to learn, the ability to problem solve, but very fast and very efficient, and build upon that information. A recent study on artificial intelligence puts it somewhere at about a sixth grader's level, I heard, which I thought was interesting. And if you compare that to where we're going to be in about the next 3 to 5 years, it would be to an adult human. So it's showing us in the next few years, it's going to logarithmically grow in artificial intelligence's efficiency, effectiveness, and uses. So I think it's here to stay. It's extremely powerful, and it's got a lot of different verticals that businesses are now starting to apply it. It's not just the science fiction of the past that we always joke about or see on some of these space movies. It's really here to stay, and as you mentioned before, aptly, it's going to be used for autonomous cars. It will be used for preventing hackers taking things to the next step. So exciting to see where the future is for this, for sure.
Yeah, it's a technology that is so flexible because we've talked again with companies that are actually training these computers, and right now there's a couple problems, but they're working through them. And essentially, you can have an artificial intelligence learn to do just about anything with enough data. And well, hey, what has the last 10 years of our lives been about? It's been about collecting data from individuals, from from mass markets, from people and how they do things and what works best, things like that. Data runs artificial intelligence, and whether you like it or not, we have gotten very good at collecting data, what you do, how you do it, when you do it, blah, blah, blah. So, hey, the thing that we talk about all the time here on the show about breaches and, private information and data being stolen or collected without our knowledge, that's kind of the thing that allowed artificial intelligence to, kind of rise.
Yeah, yeah, and I think one of the areas to me that gets me really excited. I don't love the medical field because I always feel like the doctor doesn't understand fully what they're diagnosing me with. They don't have enough, research, so on and so forth. Applying AI to medicine is one of the fields I think that's going to overnight change dramatically. When you look at just the sheer amount of research that's done on cancer and proper treatment, there is no physician that has the capability just to full-time read all the research papers on how to combat cancer. However, applying artificial intelligence to that and machine learning, you can improve cancer diagnosis, you can improve treatment, and you could tailor that to specific patients so they could heal better, so they could, detect the early signs of it. It's really almost like personalized treatment for serious life-threatening problems. To me, that's exciting, and that's good use of the technology, maybe better than applying it to autonomous cars or other areas, because that's affecting lives here and now immediately that no doctor could ever solve.
Yeah, that is an area that we have certainly seen where it's just like the car analogy where, when you have a million cars on the road all talking to each other, they essentially have the sum knowledge of every mile driven on every single car. Medical computers, same thing, where you can expect a doctor to work day and night to be the best, cancer doctor there's ever been, but he'll never have the time or energy available to a computer to go over millions of medical records of cancer patients. So, these computers can just do things that people can't. And where we're seeing it so far is not replacing doctors, but double checking doctors and recommending alternate treatments to doctors. So they're augmenting what doctors are already doing. So
yeah, that's a good point.
It's definitely a good
second opinion in a sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the best second opinions you can definitely get. So another area that, Scott, we have about a minute left. So please expand on quantum computing. Give us 1 minute. Why do you like quantum computing?
Yeah, and just in brief, maybe at a higher level there, we're all used to traditional computers where it's using ones and zeros, and it's a state. It's either a 0 or it's a 1, which is a binary digit. Now, quantum computers are very different when you go down low under the hood there, and they're not based upon transistors, but quantum computation using quantum bits. And it allows for multiple states. And the bottom line, what is it doing? It's the future of computers. A large-scale quantum computer theoretically could solve a ton of problems much, much quicker than a traditional computer that you and I and all the listeners use there. And so when you're applying these newer algorithms, when we're applying artificial intelligence, when we're trying to have a autonomous car drive on its own, having this quantum computer power would be phenomenal. It would be phenomenal applying it to something, as we talked about, with bitcoins and generating, solving algorithms there. So there's so many different uses. Everything we have today, our smartwatch, our smartphone, our car, our desktop computer, everything, our TVs, they all have the essence of a traditional computer, and they're used based upon transistors and ones and zeros. That world, imagine that overnight changing to quantum computer power where you could do so much more, so much faster. Very, very exciting. Still early stages, but it's certainly coming down the line there, and especially
Absolutely.
when I think about security and encryption. It's great.
Yeah, and you know, there is active work going on there. And hey, maybe next time we'll talk about that. But Scott,
Sure.
30 seconds. We always direct people to scottschober.com. That is your website, and of course Berkeley Veritronics, but also your book Hacked Again. Anything else you want to tell people about?
No, I just want to say again, congratulations for your great success there, Computer America, and to Craig. And thank you so much for having me on. I really, really do appreciate it.
Our pleasure. And again, we really do value your input. And everyone else out there, thank you for listening to Computer America. Fun conversation. And hey, be sure to tune in tomorrow where we do it all again. Everyone, have a great day. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.